in order to get that loan, you have to partner with a licensed contractor who's going to pull the permits and things for you. Roaches, bed bugs, fleas, all at the same property. So this one did a cash advance on the credit card and bought a house with a credit card, and that was a 3-unit thing. So touch on the college point. I don't want to say I'm anti-college, but kind of college creates a certain mindset that, okay, I need to go get employed somewhere, and so what we've created here is a bunch of entrepreneur type thinking, where you're thinking the sky's the limit. I want to do something for my kind of like really. I think that you can find yourself, or you can really. My son is 18. He graduates in not June, and hindered by he's that. He's kind of saying like I know people that all of it. For instance, there's a lawyer that's investing in real estate now. Everyone there is very successful career. He's 70 years old. He flips houses now. And I'm not going to college. I wish I would have done this my whole life. He said I really enjoy this, and it's almost like society, or at least that sitting in an office makes you feel like I'm not going to college on the wrong track because I'm lost or some trajectory I was on. And now I told people really I think that you can like find yourself in that and really be propelled to success that you're not tired from that, kind of hindered by that degree. Like I know people that, so for instance, there's a lawyer that invests in real estate now, very successful career. He's 70 years old and he flips houses now. He said, I wish I would have done this my whole life. He said, I really enjoy this. And I didn't like sitting in an office talking to people all day, but because that was like the trajectory I was on, and now I told people I was an attorney, and there's a status with that, and it's like I'm so much happier now that I retired from that and I can just flip houses all day because that's what I like to do. So don't think that like college is the best way. I think there's better ways for certain people, and it sounds like you're exploring something different. Yeah, and there's definitely a need for it for some people. My generation, I think, was the first one. So millennials after the baby boomers were all saying, the baby boomers said, my kids are going to go to college. So all of my peers went to college. And me saying I wasn't going to go to college, my grandparents were like, what's wrong? Because they're like, I don't want to be a garbage man or something like the rest of you. Like they wanted some sort of prestige, Right. And I say, I just want to get into real estate, And so, have you read Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Great book, yeah.
That's the book that most investors start with, and I read that when I was 16. It was like a huge paradigm shift of, like, what if instead of working for money, I just bought things that made me money the rest of my life, and then from a generational plan, those things, those houses that I buy can continue to pay me and my kids, So I always tell my kids, like, if you want to be a missionary in Africa and still make $100,000 a year, real estate is the path that can get you,
passive income. Yeah.
And so to get started, a lot of people think I don't have the money, where do I start? And so I always say, getting paid to learn construction. A video a couple weeks ago was 9 ways to get started. It's already sounds like it's opening your eyes, but the best way is landscaping, maybe demo, maybe managing. Like you're seeing Rich Dad Poor Dad different getting paid to learn construction real estate with your experience now, and you're getting paid to start. It's already sounds like it's opening your eyes to maybe landscaping, maybe demo, maybe management. Like you're seeing different avenues that you can go in real estate with your experience now, and you're getting paid to learn and be exposed to that, which is great. Do you read a lot or listen to podcasts at all?
I read less. I listen to podcasts quite a bit.
Which one? Like any real estate related ones?
No, just like a lot of not so many informational podcasts. I listen to a lot I like history a lot. War history, especially like World War II history. Vietnam era history is very interesting to me, so a lot of the stuff I consume as far as podcasts is related to that kind of stuff.
Okay. Thousands of different podcasts that offer learning opportunities for what you're interested in. So if it is property management or how to start a construction company or anything, that's a great pivot. Maybe 20 years ago, I decided I'm not going to listen to anymore. I'm only going to listen to audiobooks at the time, but now it's podcast. But by doing that every single day, I listen to it. I'd probably listen to 10,000 hours educational content when it comes to real estate. So certain things come easy to me now. Complicated because I just constantly expose myself to it. Now it's easy and now I can implement. If a private lender says when you want this to balloon or do you want to do interest only, I know exactly what they're talking about. Before I was, how do I even start? What is this lingo? I don't know. The more you listen to it, the more it starts to become normal. I guess how do you think I can help you? What do you want to learn today?
So I guess my biggest thing coming into it is just like what it is that you do, and like I know that all avenues of real estate, there's a lot of money to be had. And just like, again, you said you started for yourself when you were 18, 19, coming out of high school. I guess more so just like what that looked like for you and how you were able to scale that up and to where you're at now.
Yeah, so it was a lot of failing forward. A lot of I'm just going to jump into something and be terrible at it, and then figuring out a way to stick to it. A lot of people in real estate, I think, well, in anything in life, I guess, jump into something, and as soon as it gets hard, they think, okay, if this is hard, it must not be the right thing for me. I'm going to pivot to something else. Then they get into something else, they try it. Oh, this is hard for me. I'm going to pivot to something else. And then they look up 10 years from now, and they've tried 20 different businesses, and really every business they could have been successful at, but as soon as it gets hard, I saw a graph, and it's like you start it, you're excited, and then it gets hard. But if you push through it, that gives you the momentum to get to the next mountain, and that's where success is found. And so a lot of people, they get into it and they fail, and they're like, all right, this must not be for me because I failed, and they switch. But imagine a life of just jumping into something fail. If you're interested in something, I guess I would encourage you to find something that interests you, and then try to go into that past the failure point and recognize you mess a lot of stuff up. So I bought a house when I was 20 years old. It was a foreclosure. It was $30,000. I got an FHA loan, and I got a 203K loan, which is a remodeling loan that is available through the government. It's not meant for major remodels, but you can use it for major remodels if you can structure it that way. And mine was a complete gut job. So in order to get that loan, you have to partner with a licensed contractor who's going to pull the permits and things for you. And I found a deacon from my church who was a contractor, and he would come and like show me how to lay one tile, and then say, all right, the next 100 are yours, and he'd leave, and then said, call me when the tile's done. So I'd go every day after work and lay, like the first day it was like 2 tiles because I didn't know I couldn't get the mortar right, and what if I got too many and they were crooked, so I'd take them back up, scrape it all up. It was a nightmare. But then the next day I was able to do 10, and then I got some momentum with that project. So it was supposed to take 6 months, and I was hoping to make 40,000. It ended up taking 2 years, and I only made like 8. So it was a big learning curve, and all along I had friends and family that meant well, but they were telling me, maybe this isn't going well. Maybe you should sell it, or maybe you just get out from under it, cut your losses, and go get a job or whatever. Luckily, I was blessed that I had a job that paid my expenses and gave me benefits, but real estate is really what I always wanted to do. So at work, I couldn't help but daydream of what I was going to do remodeling that night, or what I was going to reinvest that money with, and I was just super excited about it. So my first project, like I said, I didn't make very much, but before that one was completed, I was still looking for new deals, and I found one on the market that had been on the market for over a year. And I called the listing agent. I was super nervous to call him too, because I don't have the money, so why am I calling this guy? But I was like, hey, is there any way that they would let me make payments to them instead of paying them all off at first? And at first he said no. And then a couple months later he called me back and said, actually, they'll take the payments, because this was a landlord who had maybe 10 properties. He sold 9 of them, and this was the last one that wasn't selling. His wife had already retired to Florida, and the only thing keeping him from Florida was selling this house. So they listed it for like 100, then it dropped to 80, then 60, and I called, I think, when it was at 50 or 60, and he said he's willing to do a land contract, and he's willing to take it, you can buy it for 40,000. He said, but we need 20% down. I said, I don't have 20% down, I have $4,000. If I gave you 4,000, would that work? And he's like, yeah, 10% down is fine. So I bought a 4 unit for 4,000 down, and it was a nightmare. I learned a lot. Like the rents were at like $250, and they should have been double that. I dealt with drug addicts. I dealt with roaches, bed bugs, fleas, all at the same property. So this one property was a lot of education for me. At the time, I didn't have money to hire a maintenance person. So if someone called and said, hey, there's water everywhere, you need to get somebody. It's like, all right, well, I'm going. Why do you know how to fix plumbing? Like, no, I got YouTube. I got some tools.
Figure it out.
I gotta figure it out, because there's no other option. There's no plan B. Fast forward 5 years, that property was ugly, and it was a struggle to get through, but I was able to sell that property and use the proceeds as a down payment for the house that we're in now. So it was like, I wouldn't be where I am now if it wasn't for that property. And the beauty with real estate is you can make a lot of mistakes, and time kind of heals all wounds when it comes to real estate. So you can overpay and it will eventually go up, or you'll pay it down and you'll still be okay. You can buy it and the rents are high, but over time rents will keep going up. You can buy something that needs a lot of work, but if you can fix it up, it'll typically, the time aspect of real estate fixes all things, because real estate traditionally goes up in value, rents traditionally go up, but your expenses are fixed. If you get a 30-year fixed loan, your principal and interest stay the same for 30 years. So I remember, and I'm sure you remember, like, you buy your first house, and it was a bit of a stretch. We're gonna have to not eat out, we're gonna have to cut expenses, and we can make this work. But now, looking back 10 years, it's like, oh, I wish I would have bought 10 times as many houses back then when things were cheap. But at the time, it wasn't cheap to me. I'm feeling that way now. If you've looked at the market, you're like, man, everything's so expensive. I'm gonna wait for prices to go down, or I'm gonna wait. And the saying is, you don't wait and buy real estate, you buy real estate and wait. It's because it's gonna time fixes things with real estate. So that's how I started. That was my first flip, and that was my first 4-unit property. Along a couple years later, I found a 3-unit on the market, I think 20,000, and I offered 15,000, and they accepted it. I said, "Oh, I don't have 15,000." So I called my bank and said, "Hey, can I get a loan for 30,000?" They said, "No, but we'll give you a credit card for 15,000." So I did a cash advance on the credit card and bought a house with a credit card, and that was a 3-unit. Same story. All 3 units were terrible, and I went in and did the absolute cheapest, worst remodel job on just one of the units and was able to rent it. Then I rented it for $500 a month, and then every month I'd have $500 to put into the next unit. So it took 4 months because it cost $2,000, but I eventually got that one habitable and then rented that one. Now I got $1,000 a month. And actually the building came with a tenant in the back that I needed to evict, but I couldn't afford an attorney to evict them, so I just let them live there for 4 months. And luckily after 4 months they moved, and that was perfect timing because I had $1,000 a month now that I could put into that unit. And I still have that building today. So that's kind of how I got started. And then I just kept scaling from there, and it was creative. It wasn't like there's some people I know that invest in real estate and they're older. They're starting with 400,000 in the bank. So they say, all right, well, I'm going to put 20,000 down on 20 properties. And now you talk to them and they say, well, yeah, I got 20 properties. Like, oh, he must have accumulated it over time. And it was like, well, no, that wasn't his story. My story was every single deal needed to be some sort of creative thing because I didn't have a ton of money to start with. I didn't have a rich uncle that was lending me money. I had to get super creative. But as time went on, I started raising money from other people. And now we flipped 20 houses last year, and I have 111 rental units. And I do all of my work now without any of my own money.
So during this process, did you, because oftentimes even Kiyosaki, it says they talk about a work mentor, but also a mentor who's an entrepreneur and developer and such. Have you sought that out, or was that key as you cut your teeth, by just grunting it out?
Yeah.
Do you eventually look towards and find a mentor that you work with to help you develop further?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few different models for mentorship. The first one is the podcast and the books. There's people that pour their entire lives into a book, and you can buy it for 99 cents and get their whole life's knowledge in 200 pages. So that's huge. The second thing is networking. I would show up to the events that I now host, the same group that the leader that led it then passed the torch on to me, and now I lead those meetings. So those are the evening meetings that we have once a month. I would show up there. Everyone goes around the room and says who they are and what they're looking to get out of the group. So if you said, hey, I'm just looking for a mentor, there could be a contractor there that says, hey, I'm flipping a house, and you can stop by on Saturday and check it. So you get some connections, you get some experience. So I would go to those meetings and get as much as I can out of everybody there. I'd ask people to lunch or coffee. They'd invite me to their job sites or whatever. So I learned a lot there. Then the third thing is to try to find some sort of one-on-one mentor. And I haven't been able to find that necessarily. Those options are out there, and if you have questions, I can answer questions. But the best thing, a lot of people that ask me to coach them or mentor them, the first thing I lead them to is to show up at the meetings, because there's tons of people, like-minded people. There's some younger guys there that you can talk to them and pick their brains about, hey, what's working, what's not, or someone might say, hey, I just bought my first duplex last week. You go talk to them, like, how'd you do that? And there's this loan program, or I found an investor, or I found an off-market deal, or whatever. The more you get into it, the more you start to learn what's possible. And then the fourth layer of mentorship is when you pay for a mentorship and you join a mastermind group or something like that. Those are expensive, but you get out of them what you put into them, and they can be life-changing too. And I like those types of groups because you got to pay to play, so everyone there is kind of serious. But there's also people there that might be just 1 or 2 steps ahead of you rather than 10 steps ahead. Like if I sat down with Donald Trump, I don't think he could teach me much about real estate, just because he's so far ahead that he's like, oh yeah, if you're trying to raise $1 billion, you got to do this. And that's not what I need right now. You need to learn from someone that's just 2 or 3 steps ahead of you. So if you're wanting to get into it, talk to someone who just got into it 6 months ago while it's fresh, and they can tell you what their experience was, and you can learn from them. Paid groups are great, but if you're just starting out, I think the free options are probably
plentiful there.
Yeah, all you would need. Because right now you don't even know what you don't know. And so once you get into it, you'll start being overwhelmed. Oh man, there's a lot of stuff I don't know. And then once you start learning, then you can start applying, and it gets kind of exciting from there.
I'm in a process right now with a partner where I'm not a real estate guy. I'm not a developer guy. And it's been past 6 months has been a journey to just learn, just even the lingo. Yeah. We sat down with a very well respected and known developer in the area, and they're talking. My partner's looking at me and is going over our heads, So there's been some crash courses in there, but I think nothing better than getting in there and learning. And some of these folks have been very generous with their knowledge and saying, look, here's kind of what you need to do, go do this stuff, and then come back and we'll circle back around. There's a lot of fruit in what you said, right?
Yeah.
You have to cut your teeth. My background is, so I'm a geneticist scientist by nature from MSU. I work in retirement plans and finance, and this is because I love numbers, and more than that, my passion was to help people. So once I got out of there, got into a place with no educational background in it, but the people there saw something and just being able to coach and mentor through that and build that. So now I'm going on 15 years over there.
Yeah.
Going back to your college days,
Yeah.
I've got a degree and everything, but has nothing to do with what I'm doing now. And my later phase in life now is I love real estate and development and stuff, going into that. And a lot of that is just learning by failing. And I think that's no better teacher if you take that and actually apply what you're learning on that.
Yeah. If you think about it, that there's no losses, there's only learnings and winnings, then it's like, oh, everything I do is a great opportunity then, because you can do it and fail, but now you're smarter.
Yeah.
That's a win. Or you can do it and succeed, and that's a win. It's just always upwards.
In terms of opportunities and such, I know as your team is growing, and this is kind of where Connor was asking, what opportunities might you have within your organization to either help with the flipping aspect of it or the management aspect of it? If he's got a desire to learn, get into the real estate on the flipping side of it, what are you looking for someone in that realm to kind of join your team and such, or where are you at?
Right now, the only position we're hiring is like an admin, and that's probably not someone that likes to be hands-on. It's more someone that likes to be behind the scenes and organize all the chaos I create sometimes. But as far as like hands-on opportunities, there might be, like if I'm going to a flip, maybe I can tell you about it and you can swing by, or what I tend to do. So we have a lot of new agents here that are also looking for experience, and so we have agent training once a month that you could come to, even though you're not an agent. We have title people, homeowners, home warranty people, home inspectors that come and speak to our agents once a month. So you could sit in on those, and it would just get you more familiar with the lingo and give you some faces. If you came in, like we have a meeting on the 27th this month, 6 p.m., and you're welcome to come. Everything that I'm telling you about is free to attend. And a title company is talking. Not super thrilling, but if you don't know what title insurance is, it's great to be there. And now you can learn not only what it is, but a local company that provides it. A year from now, if you're buying a house and you say, well, what title company are you going to use? You're like, I know what title insurance is, and I know who I should call. It kind of slowly starts to build your work. So attending those meetings, I think, would be super helpful, kind of getting you acclimated to it. And then as far as like mentorship, come to the meetings and the coffee, I think are kind of like the opportunities that I set up for mentorship. Because a lot of people ask me if I do mentorship or coaching, and I do a paid coaching, which isn't what I think would work well for you. The mentorship, I set up the meetings for that type of purpose. So I can allot a certain amount of hours each month to helping people. So that would be the best place to start. And then partnership is kind of the next step of that. So there's people that come and say, okay, I want to find a deal, or I want to flip a house. And then they say, hey, Dave, I found a house to flip. Can we partner on it maybe? And if the numbers make sense, then we can partner together. So now they're getting my mentorship in a deal that's going to be profitable for both of us. So after doing that a couple times, they can branch off and do their own deals, because they've done a few deals. So
you would come alongside and help with the financial side of the purchasing before the flip of it, and then they get your guidance with how the process works.
I mean, so to do a real estate deal, as you were just saying with your development deal, like you need a deal or a house. You need the knowledge on how to put the pieces together, and you need the money. And so a partnership looks like someone bringing one of those three things, or two of those three things, or if you can do all three, then you don't need a partner. Typically, it starts with finding a deal. There's some other people that have come to the meeting and say, hey, I want to get into real estate. I'm older, or my uncle has some money or something. And so if I gave you $100,000, could we put that into one of your deals, and then we could partner on it, and that's an opportunity. Or if you have the skills on how to renovate a property, then maybe you could come on as a project manager, and then we would pay you a percentage of the profit for managing that project. But most of the time it starts with finding a deal. I mean, you can drive around and try to find ugly houses and leave a post-it note on the door saying, hey, I'm interested in buying your house, give me a call. Like, it all works. Have you seen those little We Buy Houses signs around town? We put out about 100 of those so far, and we get leads from them. We'll say, hey, I saw your sign, I want to sell my house. Your sign says you want to buy my house, and then we scoop up deals that way. But oftentimes it just comes from your network or keeping your ears open. It's your reticular activator. Have you heard of that? It's whatever you're thinking about or focused on, it suddenly starts to appear. all of a sudden you start seeing potential deals everywhere that were there all along. You just weren't looking for them, you know. So like there's a guy who comes to this meeting and he works at a motel, doesn't have much money, but someone came into the motel and they said, I got to stay here because my house is, the roof is leaking, I can't afford to fix it. He's like, hey, do you want to sell your house? And the guy's like, I'll sell it for 40. And then so he came to the meeting and said, hey, I got this deal for 45 if anyone wants it. Someone buys it, he gets 5,000. He helps the guy out of the bad situation with his leaky roof. He makes 5,000 and gets experience doing a deal, and then someone else gets it for 45 and they can fix it and flip it and make their profit. So it's like a win for everybody. But he started showing up to the meetings. He was like, how do I get started? I don't have any money. I don't have any income. What am I going to do? And then lo and behold, they walk right in the front door. That stuff happens all the time if you're open to it, if you're looking for it.
I think we've seen that when you're looking at cars, right? All of a sudden, you're looking for cars, and all of a sudden now you see them everywhere, and it's kind of one of those, I think, where you're more aware, attuned to that.
Yeah. Yeah. So opportunity is everywhere. You just gotta be open to it.
In getting into real estate, so podcasting, I know you said the 27th, is there March 4th as well? I think you have another one.
But that's the
in
coffee.
the morning.
Yep.
Is that at 8 o'clock or?
7 to 9, but you can come anytime.
7
people come and stay for 2 or 3 hours. Some people just drop in before work for 20 minutes. And it's in this room. So that's why I built this room, was so we can have those meetings.
Excellent. So along with some of the real estate based content on podcasts, is there, so if he's looking to and pursue, what would education be in terms of getting licensed or into, is that something that you would encourage if he's wanting to get down this path of trying to do flips and such, or even just real estate as a general?
So you don't need to be licensed to do any of it. The only thing you need to be licensed is if you're helping other people buy or sell real estate. And so that's something you kind of gauge on, like what your network is and what your personality is. That's super well suited for people that are extroverted and they're, have a wide network. I am not so extroverted and don't have a wide network, but I have a lot of repeat and referral clients now that my pipeline stays full that way. But you do have to pay monthly to be an agent. You have to pay for your board dues and you have to pay for your broker fees. And so I wouldn't advise you do that unless that's a path that you really want to pursue. But being in construction, for example, a licensed electrician just got his license and joined our brokerage. And he said, every time I get hired by homeowners, sometimes every year someone says, well, I wanted you to come fix a couple things because I'm thinking of selling my house soon. He's like, I wish I was licensed, I could help this person. He got licensed and now that he has a stream of potential leads in his pipeline because of the work that he's in.
Sure.
And he works with other house flippers and things. So it's like, okay, if I'm already surrounding myself with these people, I'll get licensed. That's one more tool in my tool belt that I can help people with. But typically I don't say to get licensed. My son is getting licensed. So when he graduates in June, he'll be a licensed agent and he can help with certain things. So if you're looking at buying your own, so like the 4 unit that I bought years ago, that was listed on the market. And so I had to call the other agent in order to schedule a tour and to get information and all of that. Where if you're licensed, you don't have to do any of that because you can get your own information, you could do your own tours. So it's helpful from that aspect, but it's not. Or if you want to flip, for example, if you flipped one house a year and you have to pay an agent 3% to help you sell it, if you're selling it for $150,000, that's $4,500 that you're spending on that agent. To be an agent, it costs $2,500 a year. So if you're going to flip one house a year, it makes sense to get your license. Or if you're looking at buying a rental property, buying one a year, it probably makes sense to get licensed just for the same purpose. I write offers sometimes saying, no buyer commission on this one. So the seller's going to save 3%. So my offer is sweeter than someone else's for the same price.
Sure.
If it allows me to get my foot in the door where someone else couldn't, then it makes sense. But also as an agent, you can call other agents and say, hey, agent to agent, tell me a little bit more about this, and they'll open up to you more than they would a traditional, buyer. So there's pros and cons to it, but that's not normally where I would say to start. I normally say to start with what you're doing, to get a job in the industry somewhere where you want to be. So if you're interested in property management, get a job in property management and do that for a little while, and you can start to learn the lingo and get paid to learn the business, because there's a lot of lessons to be learned in real estate, and if you can get paid to learn those lessons on someone else's dime, that's ideal. Yeah, so what are you leaning towards, or are you just trying to figure out what options are available?
I'm trying to find like what I can do to sustain myself. Getting ready to move out and wanting to be, looking to get married in the next few years. I know there's a lot of opportunities outside of just working for your money. Like you said, make your money work for you. And I know real estate's a big one.
Yeah, even in some of the things that you said there, like if you're going to buy your first house, you see that as an asset, not a liability. And most people buy a house, they live in it, and then they picked up a 30-year bill, If you're not
So
married,
you-
yeah, you can buy a duplex and live in one side and rent the other side. You can buy a 2 bedroom and rent the other bedroom. It's called house hacking is the term that people use nowadays. But if you bought a 4 bedroom and rented out the other 3 bedrooms, there's a guy that has an office here that does that. He rents them to MSU students, I think, for $700 or $800 per bedroom. And so he gets paid like $500 a month after all of his expenses to live in his own house. And so if you're not married, that's a great option. If you are married, you could do a duplex or a 3 unit. Like we one of our 3 units that we still have, and we lived in 1 unit and rented out the other 2 units. We were only there for 6 months, but it still made it so we could get into it with better financing. You can use owner-occupied financing. I only had to put 5% down compared to 20% down on your typical.
But because you were gonna be living there,
Yep.
the financing on buying the property was different.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and so you have an owner-occupied benefit. So anytime you're buying a property for yourself to live in, not only do you get better financing terms as far as lower down payments, but you also get lower property taxes.
Okay.
So don't squander your first, like if you want to own rental real estate or investment real estate and you want to buy a house, make sure those two go hand in hand for as long as you can, you know. Move to another house, fix it up, rent it, move to another house, fix it up, rent it, and we did that maybe 3 or 4 times until I think we were expecting our 4th child, and my wife said,
Enough
we're
moving.
we're not moving anymore.
Yeah.
But remember I said everything I did, I had to get kind of creative with it because I couldn't put 20% down on each deal. So one creative way was to use, they have a 5% down conventional loan. So if I'm buying a house for, like one of the ones I bought was $60,000, I only had to put $3,000 down. And if you're a licensed agent, you can get paid a commission for buying your own house. So now if I got paid 3% on that, I got $1,800 at closing. So I had to bring $3,000, but I got paid $1,800. So really it's only $1,200, you know,
yeah.
which is, people say, well, I can't afford it, or I need to raise 20%. I've gotten houses for free before from one of our We Buy Houses signs. Someone called and said, hey, I'm behind on my payments. I said, all right, well, I can take your payments over. I can't give you any money because of what you owe. It just doesn't make sense. He said, oh, you do that for me? You know, I'll do that for you. So he signs a deed saying I now own it and I make payments to his bank. He's super thrilled to be out of a bad situation, and I got a house for no money down. I say for free. I still owe, you know, whatever he owed on his mortgage.
Balance on it, yeah.
I didn't have to get qualified for that loan. I didn't have to put the down payment down, go through the appraisal and inspection. It was just helping someone out of a bad situation. Yeah, I mean, there's endless amounts of opportunity to get started. Just kind of how do you get acclimated to what the opportunities are, and then try to pursue whichever one, you know, is for you. But yeah, I mean, and if I can be of any help, let me know. Normally people ask me questions and I'll make a video about it and then send you a video. For every question you ask, I'm sure there's a dozen people wondering the same thing, you know.
Sure.
Leverage my time that way, but it also gives me good opportunities to make videos too. So I'd appreciate any questions that you have. And that's why I said even just showing up to meetings, the more you show up, the more people start to identify you and remember what you're asking for. There was a meeting that I said, I'm looking for apartments. If anyone knows of any off-market apartment buildings, let me know. And one guy is like, oh, I got an apartment building. So I looked into it and I said, well, I don't have the $200,000 for the down payment. So then at the next meeting, I said, I need $200,000 for a down payment. And someone else came up to me and like, I got $200,000 for a down. So I got the deal and the money all from just by standing up, asking for what I wanted. You know, you can do anything you want. It's just a matter of figuring out what you want, I guess. You know.
Yeah.
It's funny, some people that have you ever walked through you do property management and you've done some demo, but you've probably seen some things. It's funny, I walk through a house like with sometimes and I'm like, oh, this place is trash. I'm like, oh, this is not that bad, you know, like, but this place is great. And where people just can't wrap their heads around sometimes what it takes to get into real estate, or like what the before of some of these projects that we flip looked like.
I've seen befores.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but not it, like you get acclimated to it, and like you might not even realize it now, but even doing the demo that you've been doing, you're more like, you might be able to now walk into a house that someone else would say, this is disgusting. You're going to say, oh, this isn't that bad. You know, 3 hours, this place looked great. You know,
I think that's where he's heading to next over here is apartment or something? Or house that he's
something
clearing
with
out?
cabinets and drywall, so.
tell you what I tell everybody, we're always looking for deals too. So if you ever find houses that need to be fixed up, we're interested. We're still flipping houses, but I really want apartment buildings. And the last one I offered on was 164 units. So we have a wide scale of what we're looking for. So ground up development, I think takes too long, but we do have a partner. And they came to one of my meetings and he said, we have a couple $1 million to deploy. We're licensed contractors. We normally do custom spec homes and we want to get into multifamily. It just takes, 3 years to break ground on a development. And he's like, so if we could just buy apartment buildings that need renovation, then we could get those up and operational a lot faster. We're looking for anything that you think might be a good deal, or partners to help fund deals too, because we primarily fund all of our deals with other people's money.
Sure.
So
Okay.
if you know anyone looking for above average returns and has any lazy money, keep us in mind.
Okay. Definitely need to connect to you and Justin, because that's exactly his kind of model.
Yeah, a lot of my investors are former clients as an agent. They said, we want to buy a rental property where our cash flow is good, and then they get into it and like, we don't want to manage it or do any of that. I said, well, if you just give me your money, we have a team that does all that, and we can just give you monthly payments if that's what you want. And a lot of them are thrilled with that. Most of them give us the money, and then they say, can you just roll it into the next deal and just keep it? Because we like the hands-off approach. So
absolutely. Thank you very much for your time. This was
Absolutely.
helpful. Anything else?